Since the annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Russia has faced some of the most stringent sanctions ever imposed by Western countries. These sanctions have targeted various sectors, including finance, energy, defense, and individuals closely linked to the Kremlin. Despite these significant economic penalties, Russia has managed to adapt and, in many cases, circumvent these sanctions. This video explores how Russia is getting around Western sanctions, examining the strategies and tactics that have allowed the country to maintain a level of economic stability and continue funding its military activities. One of the primary ways Russia has been able to circumvent Western sanctions is through its ability to exploit global energy markets. Energy exports, particularly oil and gas, are the backbone of the Russian economy. And while Western countries have implemented sanctions on Russian energy, many nations outside the West have continued to purchase Russian oil and gas. Russia has redirected its energy exports to countries such as China, India, and Turkey, which have shown little appetite for participating in Western sanctions. For instance, since the start of the Ukraine war, China and India have become two of Russia's largest oil buyers, purchasing crude oil at discounted prices. This shift in trade has allowed Russia to maintain a steady flow of revenue despite sanctions. In addition to redirecting its energy exports, Russia has also developed an extensive network of middlemen and shell companies to disguise the origins of its products and avoid sanctions. For example, Russian oil has been shipped to countries that are not directly involved in sanctions, such as the United Arab Emirates, where it is mixed with other oil and then resold on global markets as a different product. This laundering of Russian oil allows it to enter markets that might otherwise block it. Moreover, shipping companies in countries like Greece and Malta have been reported to continue transporting Russian oil, further complicating efforts to enforce sanctions. Russia's use of alternative financial systems has also been crucial in its ability to navigate sanctions. When Western countries impose sanctions on Russian banks and cut off the country from the global SWIFT payment system, which is essential for international financial transactions, Russia accelerated the development of its own financial infrastructure. The Russian government has promoted its domestic payment system, SPFS, as an alternative to SWIFT. While SPFS is not as widely used as SWIFT, it has allowed Russian banks to continue operating internationally, particularly in countries that are not participating in sanctions. Additionally, Russia has strengthened its financial ties with countries like China, which has helped mitigate the impact of Western sanctions. Chinese banks have expanded their operations in Russia, and the two countries have increased the use of their own currencies, the ruble and yuan, in bilateral trade. This de-dollarization of trade between Russia and China reduces their reliance on the US dollar and the Western financial system, providing Russia with a degree of insulation from the sanctions regime. Another key factor in Russia's ability to withstand sanctions is its large stockpile of foreign reserves and its economic resilience. Before the invasion of Ukraine, Russia built up one of the world's largest foreign currency reserves, amassing over $600 billion in foreign assets. Although Western sanctions have frozen around half of these reserves, the Russian government has been able to use the remaining reserves to prop up its currency, the ruble, and stabilize the economy. In addition, Russia's central bank has implemented strict capital controls, making it difficult for money to leave the country and preventing a run on the ruble. These measures, combined with high energy prices, have allowed Russia to weather the immediate economic impact of sanctions more effectively than many analysts initially expected. Russia has also adapted its industrial sector to become more self-reliant in the face of sanctions. Western sanctions have targeted key sectors of the Russian economy, including technology, defense, and aerospace, cutting off access to critical components like semiconductors and advanced machinery. In response, Russia has increased domestic production of these goods and sought alternative suppliers from countries that are not enforcing sanctions, such as China and Iran. For example, Russia has reportedly turned to Chinese companies for critical technology components, while Iranian drones have been used by Russian forces in Ukraine. These partnerships with non-Western countries have allowed Russia to circumvent some of the most crippling aspects of the sanctions and continue its military operations. In terms of agriculture, Russia has leveraged its position as one of the world's largest exporters of wheat and other grains to mitigate the impact of sanctions. Despite the disruption caused by the war and sanctions, Russia's agricultural sector has remained relatively resilient, thanks in part to its ability to find new markets across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. These regions have been less willing to impose sanctions on Russia due to their reliance on Russian food supplies. Moreover, Russia has used its control of grain exports as a bargaining chip in diplomatic negotiations, securing concessions in exchange for the continued flow of food exports. Cyber tactics have also played a role in Russia's response to sanctions. Russian state-backed hacking groups have been linked to cyber attacks on Western institutions, including financial organizations and government agencies. While these cyber activities do not directly circumvent sanctions, they have been part of a broader strategy to disrupt the enforcement of sanctions and retaliate against Western countries. In addition, Russia has used its cyber capabilities to target companies and organizations that are critical to the enforcement of sanctions, such as those involved in energy infrastructure and financial services. Finally, Russia's domestic propaganda efforts have been instrumental in maintaining public support for the government and its policies in the face of sanctions. Russian state media has downplayed the impact of sanctions, portraying them as a form of Western aggression designed to weaken Russia. This narrative has resonated with much of the Russian population, which has been subjected to years of state-controlled media that depicts the West as hostile to Russian interests. The government has also implemented social safety nets and subsidies to help mitigate the economic impact on the population, particularly in areas hardest hit by sanctions, such as the industrial and agricultural sectors. In conclusion, while Western sanctions have undoubtedly hurt Russia's economy, they have not crippled it as much as many had hoped. Through a combination of redirecting energy exports, developing alternative financial systems, building resilience in key sectors, and forming strategic partnerships with non-Western countries, Russia has been able to circumvent and adapt to these sanctions. However, the long-term impact of sanctions remains uncertain as the economic costs continue to mount, and Russia's ability to sustain its current strategies may face challenges over time.